A&B Properties is Quincy's largest apartment rental company with hundreds of units available. They offer short-term and long-term rentals with 1 up to 4 bedroom apartments. A&B Properties meets the needs of its tenants with care, compassion, and a quality of service that exceeds expectations. A&B Properties also has a convenient tenant app for you to do your payments or make repair requests. Give them a call today. A&B Properties, 217-919-8080, Quincy.
And my guest today is the very lovely and the guy who can wear pink, Payne Schoen, with Payne Schoen Consulting. Is the website PayneSchoenConsulting.com?
That it is.
Okay, so I want to thank you for wearing pink. You can pull that off. Did you know that pink used to be a masculine color before World War I?
I did not know that.
During I think right before the Depression, pink was just kind of a masculine color and blue was feminine. And then sometime in between World War I and World War II, it flipped.
Why?
Somehow. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure that pink used to be a masculine color because I remember my grandmother being really off-put by us telling that pink was feminine. She's like, no. She's like, not where I'm from.
Not where she
grew
grew
up.
up.
Right. But anyway, Payne, thank you for coming on the pod.
My pleasure.
I remember, so one of the reasons why you're on this podcast is because we have a mutual benefit society, mutual admiration society, and you do a lot of work of helping people, and you have helped me tremendously. And you are, between you and I and our little threads back to each other and texts amongst the emails and all the texts, you're always thanking other people. You're very thankful all the time. And you've thanked me so many times that now I have to do the same for you because I really want to. I got to tell you, the very first time that I remember talking to you was at the old Times Square at 5th and Hampshire. Now I don't know if that was the very first time we sat down and hung out, spoke, broke bread. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was our first meeting, like one-on-one for sure.
Yes, old Times Square.
Yep.
And I remember
Window seat.
You
were facing north. I was facing south.
Goodness. Okay, I didn't know that. So you are so detail-oriented. A lot of people in Quincy keep on hearing your name over and over again, okay? And I know that you do a lot of work with corporations, businesses, both large and small in Quincy. Mm-hmm. And like you and I have something in common, we have lots of things in common, but another additional thing is that sometimes people don't know what you and I do. They'll see us on socials, they'll hear our names, and you have a lot of humility. So, you're not real quick to run to the mountaintops and talk about all the things that you do, but you do a lot, okay? You're on various boards. You do a lot of community service. You're an overall very, very good guy. You'll invite people to golf outings, and they don't even know how to play golf, but you're comfortable watching them swing and miss. And you're a good golfer, by the way. I want you to kind of talk a little bit about your trip to Europe and kind of some of the things that you do, and then I'm going to kind of talk about what I think that you do.
Okay.
So you got back from a trip from Europe a little while ago, and I kind of want to just talk. I want to hear about that.
Okay. Where would you like to be?
Why did you go to Europe?
Well, trying to see foundation-wise. I mean, for me, to give context, community has been a huge part of my life, my experience here in Quincy. I've had an incredible experience when it comes to moving here. I moved here. I was trying to think about this before I came. I think it was 12 years ago when I moved here.
Moved to Quincy
from Boston. Yeah, so From Boston. So from the city to Quincy, didn't know anybody, moved because of my wife, at that time girlfriend, now wife. We were progressing, and so it just made sense. And so I moved here not knowing anybody, and it was probably, I want to say, 5 or 6 months into that experience and into that move where my wife is like, you either need to figure something out or move back to Boston, because I was depressed. I'd left all my friends. It might have been a year into that. I didn't know anybody. I hadn't really plugged into a community. I was, to be completely honest, I didn't really want to start over. It was really hard for me to meet a bunch of people in Boston, and I'd finally met them, and then I knew intuitively, as a person of faith, I believe, God led me here, but I wasn't good. And so we were at kind of a tipping point, and I had happened to join a golf course, and I met some people, and some things started happening. That's actually kind of where I first got introduced to you. I saw your name around, and I reached out to you, and then everything just took off. And so that was kind of my first experience of getting plugged into the community. And you talk about how much I've helped other people. Man, it has been paid back tenfold. I wouldn't be here where I am today, or even had been in Quincy, if it wasn't for so many people investing in me. And so one of the reasons I think I'm humble, or I try to defer it, is probably insecurity, but also just knowing how many people have helped me get here. So all that to be said, had some cool opportunity. My background is in accounting, actually. I call myself a recovering CPA. For all the CPAs out there, it's a great profession. It just wasn't the best profession for me. I often say, if I had looked up in any of my accounting classes and looked around, one person wouldn't have fit, and it would have been me, the guy wearing pink, but also the guy who wanted to do group projects and collaborate, and everybody else just wanted me to shut up and let's move on. And so it's always my start was in accounting. Then I got a taste in entrepreneurship. Then I got the opportunity to work for a law firm and help build out operations. And that's really where I got introduced to personal growth, leadership development. That's where I joined the Maxwell leadership team to use some of the resources at that law firm. And that's where I hired my first coach. The bug started. That fast forward from there to 10 years later, I decided, I knew my calling, my purpose, kind of really what filled my cup was helping others succeed, helping others win, whether that be in team development or one-on-one coaching. And that's when I went out on my own. And about a year after I started my business, I've always been a relational guy. It's one of my core values. I met somebody about 9 months after starting my business who worked for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. She's also a Maxwell leadership team member. We got to talking. She was working inside this organization and invited me to London, and ended up working with a couple of European sales teams for a few days, doing some values training and some leadership development training. And so that's how I ended up in London a year after starting my business.
Okay, you started your business when?
I laugh because I started in the middle of the pandemic. So it was 2021. It would have been February of 2021 when I started my business 3 years ago.
Yes. And it was when the what was kind of hitting the fan all around the world. Yep. The world was screeching to a halt. Now,
it was a year after COVID was introduced. So COVID came out, first surfaced March of 2020. But everybody was still figuring out, things were still shut down. People weren't meeting in person. So we were still in the heart of it for sure.
Okay. So maybe I have my dates wrong, because I know that you started, we have to give our listeners some context here, okay? So if anybody wants to actually know if they're in front of their computers or their superpower magic phones, they can go to Payne Schoen Consulting.com. Is that correct?
They can.
It's Payne, Payne. Schoen is Schoen, Consulting.com.
Yes.
So they can go there and check that out. But what's interesting about you is you formed, I won't talk about who is in this particular group, but you formed a mastermind.
Correct.
And I believe that was in 2020.
It was.
Okay, so about a year and a half before you started your business.
Correct.
Okay. So for those who don't know what a mastermind is, do you want to operationally define
Yeah.
Or define what that is?
Sure. When I think of mastermind, it's becoming a more mainstream common word, but it's a group of like-minded people. It's a community. And I started it because I wanted to be intentional with the people I surrounded myself with. There's the old quote, you're the average of 5 people you surround yourself with, right? And I took that to heart at the time, and I really wanted to be intentional with, hey, who am I spending time with? Because if that's true, and I just took it at surf value, if that's true, I don't want to leave it to chance. And so that's when I started thinking about, well, who are the people that I would want to spend time with, invest in, but also have them invest in me, learn from their perspective. I wanted it from a broad stroke of people. And it's funny, the first person I asked was a complete train wreck, because the way I operate typically is I think about something for a very, very long time, and I think myself out of why it won't work. I get fears, limiting beliefs, insecurities. Like, why would people want to do this? It's just you, Payne. Like, nobody else needs this. Although, you're in this community of Maxwell Leadership, which is the largest leadership development organization in the world. There's now over 50,000 people, but they're all unique. You're just, on an island here. So I sat on it and churned for about 9 months, and I was sitting in a Greta board meeting. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. Today's the day. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to ask that person sitting across the table from me. And I walk out with him. Well, actually, I decided to change my mind. I'm like, okay, unless he walks out with me, I'm not going to do it.
Well, you're asking this person
to join the mastermind.
To join the mastermind or a mastermind.
At this point, it would have been the mastermind. I hadn't started one. I had participated in them myself virtually and some destination masterminds, but I'd never started my own. And so I knew what it was, but I never had ran it. And I hadn't really thought about it. And so lo and behold, I find myself walking out, and he's right there. I was like, all right, serendipitous, let's just do it. And so I babble and ramble and second guess, and it just is a train wreck. And, he was so generous, and he's like, when you figure it out, let me know. And I was devastated, mortified, everything you can imagine. It was so ridiculous. I didn't go on. I didn't ask anybody else. And then I'm like, you know what? I had a meeting scheduled. I decided to meet with this person because I had a list of people, and this was the second person on my list. I met with this person. We had been in a meeting, and we were talking. We talked about everything but that, and we went about an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't ask. And I finally got the courage. I asked. It happened to be a meeting with you, and I explained it. I'd learned from the first failure. I had explained it better and said, this is what I'm trying to do. Just get a group of guys, people together to unpack. I think we're going to go through this book, but I really don't know what it looks. But it's really like just do life, do life. And I don't remember. Do you remember what you said? Your response?
Oh yeah.
Because what do you remember?
I think I said, oh yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm all in.
You were 100. You said, you absolutely said all in. After I explained, he's like, what your initial response was, you'll never believe this. I said, why? He's like, exactly what you just described is on my to-do list to find outside of Quincy because I didn't know it existed. And so your response gave me the courage and the confidence. And from there, it was like, okay, it's not so crazy of an idea. And lo and behold, we started meeting January, I think it was 17th, 2020. It was our first meeting. We met every other week. And, that group was instrumental in my life. It's part of the reason why I started my business. But through COVID, having, somebody from the faith community, nonprofit, a couple of business owners, somebody from the medical community, and somebody from the legal community, all around a table every 2 weeks, sharing and doing life was just crazy.
And that same mastermind is still intact.
Yep. Met last night.
And we met last night.
Yep.
And it's been over 4 years.
It has been.
And those people inside that mastermind, and it's not fair to talk about who's in those groups. It's not fair because they're not here.
Yep.
But, if the mastermind, to give people context of kind of what we're talking about, imagine a situation in which, you had just said it. I was looking for something more out of life, out of my business, out of my relationships. And I'm the kind of person where if I can't find that internally and I can't find it on the internet, and I'm going into, what am I going to do? Go to a Reddit chat room and figure it out? I'm not going to figure it out. So I was on the internet. I was thinking, you know what? Like once a year, I need to go to a leadership conference And I'm looking them up, and some of them are like a couple, $2,000 or $3,000. Some of them are 10, some of them are 30, some are 50. I was looking at the Harvard Business School, like the 30-day Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, what do I was like, okay, I have to go out of Quincy because there's nothing happening inside the Quincy area for that kind of thing. And then when you said, hey, what do you think about creating, really joining a group of people that, I don't know if you said an attorney, a banker, a pastor.
Well, I didn't have all of those because I had no yeses yet. So those weren't all of them.
Right. But that's kind of like sometimes masterminds, you've got.
I knew it wanted to be different. I wanted different perspectives. I didn't want all consultants because it gives you a very limited scope of perspective.
So when you did that, and when we started meeting, I remember that was 2 days, January 17th. So that was like 2 days before my birthday, like 4 years ago. And I remember our meeting and walking out of that meeting thinking, like, I don't ever want this to end. And I still don't want it to end. And I think it's neat that you put together something so powerful that it has so much of an impact. And even like the guys in the meeting are texting us saying, hey, thanks a lot for last night. That was super helpful. That I really needed that. And sometimes sometimes the way that you construct your meetings, sometimes you keep it real loose. Sometimes it's extremely structured. Sometimes you play games. Sometimes you take us through DISC. Sometimes you'll say, hey, there's this book. We're going to read it. It's by Napoleon Hill. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And mind-blowing books that you've presented. So it's not a book club, but it's part of a book club. But it's not.
Sometimes we read, sometimes we don't.
You haven't assigned a book to us in a long time.
Correct.
So that proves that it's not a book club. Mm-hmm. But, I bought my 5 or 6 hardcover copies of that book and sent them to 5 of the closest people, a lot of family members that I think needed to have a book like that. And I wrote in the inscription about how I learned about it.
That's cool.
And I went through a mastermind, and I'm still in it. And this book was extremely important to me. So, by the way, there's a lot of books that you introduced us to. I don't have to go through them all. Mm-hmm. But can I tell you a little bit about what I think that you do?
Sure.
So, in the green room, maybe even yesterday when you and I were talking, I go, Payne, you're so good at asking all the right questions. And you're so good at making something happen. You just make stuff happen inside. This is going to seem like super flowery, whatever, But what you do is you give people the knowledge and the confidence, and you say, the keys are inside of you. Let's find them. And I've never heard you use this phraseology. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, this is what I think you do. Okay. And you over time, when you're talking, and I know you do conferences and you do all different kinds of consulting. Like I said, you've worked with lots of large companies in Quincy and outside of Quincy. Did you go to Germany for one of those or London? Mm-hmm. It was London. Okay. Yep. So I was right with the Europe thing.
Yeah. I think maybe yesterday I was telling you about a virtual experience where it was crazy. I went around the world in a day, and I never left Quincy. So I was working with people from all over the world. It started in Europe, and that's where you might have got Germany, but just started in Europe and worked my way western.
So what you do is you talk to somebody, and if they don't open up right away, you give them just a little bit of water, so that maybe they can be hydrated. And then I'm speaking figuratively. And then maybe they're just kind of wilted. So maybe you give them some sunshine. And then they're like, okay, so I imagine, I'm making this up, but I imagine there are people that immediately open up and it's easy for you. And sometimes you have to work harder on somebody. You have to operate almost. And it's not psychotherapy. It's not, it's this intricate thing that you do where you're not trying to open somebody up and rewire them. It's nothing like that. It's not, we've talked about like therapy or life coaching or mentorship. It is all of those things, but you can't put a label exactly. I have trouble putting a label on exactly what you do. But what you have done for me and for our group and for lots of others is I believe that, I'm convinced now, that everybody has their own keys for themselves and they're fumbling around for them and they're trying to get in the door.
Yeah.
And you tell them and you allow them to see through your beautifully line of questioning and examination and concentrated intention for that person. You care so much about that person in that moment, and that person knows it. And they're like, oh. And so that person will either open up right away and you like kind of fixed them, or it takes a little bit longer. But as long as that person's okay going through the journey, down the road, and working with you, and just saying, I just trust this guy. This guy, he is just, I feel way better. And I don't know how you do it. I don't know how to do that. I know how to do other things, but I don't know how to do what you do. So mostly I just sit back, and anytime that I've had to answer your questions. So last night you asked everybody 2 questions. Was, what is a recent W, a recent win? And what are you currently learning? Which, by the way, when I answered it, I screwed up the answer. Because I answered it, and you go, yeah, okay, that's good.
Well, you didn't answer the question.
I didn't answer the question. And
Which happens, right? We avoid questions when they're harder. What are you learning right now is not a question that you get asked in normal course of days.
Nobody's going to ask me what I'm learning. Nobody.
And it's not something we think about. I'll add a little bit of context. I appreciate, and I'm humbled to hear kind of the feedback. It's not easy to explain. I'm not good at a whole lot of things, but what I am good at is connecting with people. And what I've realized is I'm really good at building trust and creating a safe space for people. And that, I think, is in the essence of being able to open up, as you said, or take a step back. Because you're right, everybody has the potential inside of them. I mean, if you think about your life journey, you started as a baby. I held a baby this morning. It was infant for the first time in a long time. My kids are a little bit more grown. And you think about, that's where we start. And what happened to get here, right? All of the things to get to you and I sitting on this podcast today. And yeah, there were tons of people that taught you. So you think about teachers in school, they gave you a specific curriculum. Here it is. You've got mentors who share their specific life experience with you and say, hey, this is what I did and this is what helped me. You've got consultants who are really experts in an area of study or problem solving or leadership. You've got consultants and they can give you programs. But if you really think about the times and the people that taught you the most, in my experience, they might have had some of that. But really, the people that I've grown and learned the most from were people that connected with me, people that listened to me, people that made me feel valued, and people who challenged me in my minimal thinking and encouraged and sometimes pushed me to think bigger. And it wasn't by saying, hey, think this. It was by saying, and I think of one who's affiliated, Jim Rapp, it comes to mind. He's got a unique way of doing this. That's interesting. I think you could do more. I think what would it look like to be bigger? And so when you really think about coaching, I think it's founded in that trust, and we all have challenges in front of us. We all have issues. We all have obstacles. I'm working with somebody just today, and he's got a successful business. He came up with this new value-add service model that he's trying to roll out, and we've been talking about it for 2 months. It's a no-brainer. I mean, it's one of those issues where it's like, it's so simple. Like, how haven't other people thought of this?
Is it a business?
It is a business. Yeah, okay. It's a business, and it's a complementary value offering to what he's already doing. So there's no new learned skill. He's got the skills to do it, but he just couldn't take the action. And we started talking about that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because we've been talking about this for a couple of months. You kind of made the commitment last month to call somebody, and you didn't really do that. So tell me more about it. There was this mental block, this fear, this wall that was preventing him from taking action. So we started talking about that a little bit more, and it came down to hearing no. He didn't want to hear no. He was afraid of hearing no. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. 8 years ago when you started your business, how often did you hear, what was your close rate? He's like, oh, it was about 1 to 5. For every 5 prospects, I got 1 yes. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What is it today? And he's humbly said, well, it's 3 or 4 to 5. So, okay, so your ratio is 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 basically now of close rate. It used to be 1 to 5. You haven't heard enough no's. Are you afraid of hearing no because you haven't heard it? And it was like that light bulb of, and I was just getting curious as to what was holding him back. And it was him that says, oh, that's what it was. It wasn't the value prop. It wasn't the message, the script, all that. It was the no. But he didn't realize he hadn't connected. He was just thinking, oh, is it a value service? Is it too simple? Is it too easy? The no was what was getting in his way. And we do that, in my experience, as we get older, we get more comfortable with where we are. We know what we know. We get brighter. We get more expertise. Sometimes more expertise means I'm going to keep doing it the exact same way I've always done it. I'm not going to change anything. And, I heard the quote once, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even worse, or even less, because if you don't change, somebody is going to make you irrelevant.
You know who Kyle Grimm is?
Kyle Grimm?
Yeah.
I know who Kyle Grimm is.
I think today I was with my daughter and I was feeding her some brisket. I know it sounds super random, but Hy-Vee down at the gas station there on Harrison.
Yep.
Like 8, what is it?
Did they got the grill out there?
They've got the grill out there.
Just drive by that. You can't drive by and not
They've
stop.
got the brisket and the salmon and the burgers. I'm feeding Press this food. I'm scrolling through trying to find something, and I think Kyle Grimm wrote one of his things that he wish he would do, like as a younger person, is to fail faster.
Yep. I think the question, I saw the same post. What advice would you give your 10-year younger self? And his was, fail faster, take more chances.
So back to this person that you're talking about how try to get as many no's as you can because you know the yes is coming.
Yeah, and I have this struggle too. It's funny. What gives me my unique ability to be able to connect and trust. I love connecting with people. Also, can be a blind spot for me because I have a fear of rejection. If I interpret somebody's behavior as not liking me, and I'm not in a strong mental space, I will get in my own head. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I offend him? I'm a people pleaser. And so what makes me good can also set me up for failure because I'll try to be something I'm not because of this natural tendency of wanting to please.
Do you think, well, let me rephrase it. What percentage of people do you think have a pretty mild to serious fear of rejection? I mean, is it half? Is it over half? Because I can tell you right now.
Well, you go
that might be my biggest.
Yeah, you go to like personality assessments. I use DISC is the one that I use. If you look at kind of the breakdowns that they say, more than half of the population fall on the more right side of the brain, emotional, intuitive, relational, and the other portions on the left side more logical. All of those relational people, if they're not have that fear in them, but I think we all have fears, or if you don't want to call it a fear, an inner critic. And if we're not careful, that inner critic can get really loud, and that inner critic wants to keep us comfortable, wants to keep us safe, wants to keep us doing the same things because it's what we know. And going back to the point we were trying to make was, you've been really successful doing the same things, and you haven't had to change. Yeah, he's made modifications to what he does, but this is like a new line offering. You haven't done that in a while, but you're looking to expand and grow anyways. This is an easy next step because they say yes or no. It's a short change. You add a whole new product offering. That's going to be a lot bigger of a jump, and so this is actually the next step on the journey to go to wherever you want to go.
So somebody who, when I see you up on stage, you do your Live to Lead every year. And so for those listening, once a year, there's a venue of your choosing and you sell tickets. I think Rachel, my wife, has gone the last 2 years. I've definitely gone before. I think Rachel, your wife was at the last one. as well. I'm positive about it because I know Rachel and Christy were at the end.
The same table. If I
yeah,
recall.
like just hanging out, and then afterwards spend 45 minutes in the parking lot, not wanting to leave and trying to, share what they've learned about everything, about being married to us or being just being women.
Share war stories. Yeah,
just talk about
that's
stuff.
That's the community, and I think if I look to the common thread amongst it, for me, it's community, and so I do the event to build community. And build relationships because they're important to me, and they've added tremendous value to me. I mean, our relationship is a perfect example, but not everybody has the opportunities. And so because I've got this gift and I can connect, I love connecting people.
I think when you say connect, that can sometimes be just taken for granted. Those words, one thing that like kind of has always bothered me as a person growing up is just all of the platitudes and all of the cliches and the sayings and the things that you've heard over and over and over. Failing faster. That's a new one for me. I haven't heard that one.
Really?
Maybe that's an ancient old adage pulled from somewhere.
Been around for a while. I don't know the first time I heard it, but you think about it: fail fast, fail small. Well, you speak of Live to Lead. I think of Ryan Leak. He did a bit at Live to Lead. And he said, there's levels to failure. There's $10 failures, there's $100 failures, there's $1,000 failures, there's $1 million failures. $10 are like, you forget after the complimentary period to cancel subscription, so they hit you for $25 a month, and you can come back from that. You drop your cell phone without insurance, you're out $700. But you make some of these larger decisions. You go this way when you should have went that way, and you spend $10,000, or you get into marriage and decide to get out of it. You're going to split your assets. Those are big failures that if you don't have a lot of small failures stacked up, you don't come back from big failures. You won't do them again because you're so terrified of the failure. And I've been afraid of failure. I've been afraid of failing, some because of the career choices I've had. Man, going into accounting was a complete failure in my opinion for me because it took me to a dark place. I struggle with comparison, and I looked around and I said, man, these people are just a lot better than me, and no matter how hard I worked, I never could seem to catch them. It just seemed like they were continuing. It's like the old professional athlete analogy. You look at a pro doing it, they just make it look so simple, but when I go out there and do it, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm exerting effort. And that was what was happening. All these accountants, I had some success, but they were pulling away, and I was killing myself just to try to keep up. And that's why I realized that I first thought it was me, like there's something wrong with me. But I realized it was just not a skill set that I had. Is it something to where, so if you would have gone back and started before you just started, did you get like a degree in accounting or something? Or yeah, so I had several majors in college. I think I had 5 or 6. But the kind of the tipping point was I played football. I had a knee injury, and I was thinking about law school. And my advisor said, "Don't get a 4-year degree in 4.5 or 5 and think you're going to go to a prestigious law school." So I had to get a 5-year degree because I was playing an extra year, and I either chose biochemistry or accounting. Wasn't going biochemistry, and my dad had always been encouraging me into accounting, and I'm so glad he did because I graduated 2009, heart of the recession. I think there were like 300 people in my graduating class. It was a small liberal arts college, and of that, I think there were 8 people upon graduation that had jobs, 5 of which were accountants. And so it gave me an opportunity. I don't regret it. It helps me today when I work with different personality types, or engineers or lawyers or medical people. They have a different personality than me, and so I understand the perspective and how they think better because of the exposure with accountants.
Yeah, because it's what would happen if you wouldn't have taken that path? You may or may not be in the situation. I mean,
you go to cliches. Everything happens for a reason. It's gotten me here. And
would you have had those exact daughters that you have? Those exact ones?
Probably not.
No, I mean because it's the butterfly effect. So it's almost like you can't go back in time and say, "Well, I have serious regret about that," because that is a lack of acceptance of the present.
Yeah,
almost. Because knowing, talk about biochemistry. I mean, the butterfly effect. If you would have done something different, which it's kind of a fun game to play, though. It's like, I wish I would have. Yeah. What if? But so when I see you on stage, I don't see you have any of these fears. But are you telling me that you do sometimes?
Oh, without a doubt. I think whether you want to call it a fear, an inner critic, doubt, I struggle from imposter syndrome. And it's funny, going back to what we were just talking about, it was so hard to be a good accountant. Like, I had to exert a lot of effort. Playing sports, you've got to exert a lot of effort. So I had created this conditioning that I had to work really, really hard at whatever success I got took a lot of effort. Now, don't hear this wrong that I don't have to work, but coming into this profession, it's natural. I'm gifted in this. And so it came much more natural. I use the word easy lightly because it's not easy. That created its own fear and limiting belief. Wait a minute, what am I missing? I feel like an imposter because am I building this house of cards? Like, it can't be this simple that we sit down and have a conversation and Frankie has these new insights. I didn't believe initially what I was truly selling. And even though when I started working with my first coach 12 years ago, it was transformational because it was someone who could just, as an auditory processor, ask me these questions and I could just process things much quicker. They didn't give me any insight. They just kept asking questions to go deeper and deeper. And it was just like enlightening. But I thought, you know what, that's other people can't experience this. It just must be me.
Whenever I kind of see you operate and I hear about some of the things that you do, and either I either hear about it from somebody. I mean, there's times where I get really happy when I'm out in public and if someone says Payne Schoen, like, there's been probably at least 2 or 3 times that I've gotten to kind of chime in and say, oh, hey, what are you guys talking about? Payne? What about him? And then because I get excited, like, oh, because I want to add into this because it's a charged up feeling I have when I see you operate. So without talking about like the man behind the curtain, like the magic of what it takes, I'm not going to ask you, how do you, and this is rhetorical because I'm going to ask you about John Maxwell. Okay, this is a question about John Maxwell, okay, and kind of what you've learned going through that group a little bit and some of the people that you've met along the way that have kind of moved you, helped you, open your eyes, give you paradigm shifts. But like rhetorically, how are you able to talk to somebody or like a room full of young kids? Because I know do you do Adams County CEO? I mean, you just do so much, and I know you're on different boards and you're doing so many things, but how are you able to talk to a room full of people, and maybe it's 6 kids, okay? How are you able to ask the right questions for those kids? And then when they interact with you, because the reason why I know this is happening is because I've heard these things have been happening, and I've seen it my own. I've seen it. I've got 4 years inside a mastermind with you. So, I mean, I'm kind of an expert in the witness of what you do. So without going into the magic of that, because I don't want to spoil the magic, and maybe it might be really difficult for you to explain how you're able to do that, because unless you've got, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years of experience going in and you're just doing it, it's very, I'm confused. I mean, God gave you the talent, but you've harnessed it and you've tried so hard and you've asked for certain things and you've been blessed with certain things. It's wild.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how you do that, but does it have, when you go through the John Maxwell group, so in Payne Schoen Consulting, there's different tools that you have at your disposal. And did you say that John Maxwell Group has how many people in the org?
Yeah, so it has, I think, 50,000. We're over 50,000 coaches, speakers, and trainers in 160 countries, I think.
Okay.
It's huge. But to drill it down, the complexity, really it's a community of, some people do, I mean, there's a good chunk of them that do the work that I do that are consultants. Others use it as personal growth. Others use it within organizations. And so John Maxwell or Maxwell Leadership is a tool. No different than, if you were going to get a certification in some thinky think that you do. And so some water chemicals, and you go through an organization that license that. That's what it is. And so they give you resources, training, community, but but you then come out and build a business.
Okay.
Or when I first joined, I was actually using them within an organization because I was one of the responsibilities I had was our people development, like developing our people. I didn't have any programs. A friend of mine had gone to this and it's like, hey, there's turnkey resources. And so they give you resources, programs, PowerPoints, outlines, that, and you can use them inside organizations to deliver it.
Okay. I almost brought my my Maxwell leadership coin with me. It's sitting on my nightstand, and I was going to grab it. I was going to surprise you and be like, "What's up?" Because you gave that to me once. That was really thoughtful. So kind of wrapping up, what is the most favorite thing that you get to do on a daily basis in general? It can be work, life, wife, kids. You can qualify it however you want. What is the thing that gives you the most pleasure, the most, give me something that you walk away, you're like, this is what makes me feel good.
Yeah, I probably have two answers. One of the first clients I had, I think back 3 years ago when I first started working with this organization, I had no idea what I was doing. Still to this day don't, but have a better strategy now. But being able to add value and fill people's cup up is just encouraging, inspiring. I think more even so, helping people see their own value, their worth, discover more potential. One of the first companies I started working with was a daycare here locally, and I did it selfishly because my kids went there, and I did it pro bono because I'm like, man, they could really use some just personal growth, leadership development training. I still work with them to this day. I was with two of their teams this morning, and it just the work that they do and the lives that they touch, the impact that they have on those kids is unimaginable. You can't quantify it because they're working with kids all preschool. And so they love on them. They're incredible women and a few men that just are incredible at what they do. Being able to go in there and just pour into them. And sometimes I'm not sure if they get more than I do, but just being able to value them. I think about it because I was not in a great, I called you yesterday, I wasn't in a great headspace. I tried to cancel. I tried to cancel here because it just wasn't a good headspace. And I went in there this morning and man, I just got to love on them, add value. We did some training, but really it was conversations. And I think going back to your question, what is the secret sauce? There's no one right answer to that. I'm curious. That's the other skill that I have. I'm just curious. And I like learning about people and understanding kind of where they come from and what I can learn. So filling people's cup up is one of the things. And then I've got two little kids. I've got a 6 and an 8-year-old, and just being with them and my wife and just being able to spend time and watch them learn and grow. I mean, I learn a ton about my business and about people and about myself just watching and trying to raise two little girls. And I see all of my own shortcomings that I think it's a blessing in a disguise, but just being able to be a dad is the other thing that fills my cup.
Yeah. So it goes back to this idea of you can't say enough of the platitudes of things that I get so sick of hearing all the time, but they're so important. This is one of the things that I'm working on, is taking all of the cliches that have ever existed and then kind of examining them and say, okay, which ones are really strangely profound to me and which ones are like maybe not even true. Like, for example, here's one that's not true. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's like an old kids rhyme out on the, sticks and stones, when they're getting bullied, but words will never hurt me. That's actually not true. But then there's, because I've told my kids this. I go, by the way, kids, because I've got 3. I'll say to Alejandra and Valentino, actually, that's not true. They're like, what do you mean? I go, think about that. Words will never hurt me. You're just trying to put up a facade. This is your shield you're putting up. But it's not believable unless you take the power away from the word, and you could take it the other side.
I was going to say, you could argue it.
Yeah, you could argue it.
Saying, you give the words power. And trust me, words hurt me more than they probably should. But why? What is it about somebody else's words that caused you to hurt? Because probably it questioned one of your beliefs, or it hit on one of your insecurities, or it hit on something that you were trying to be that you're really not. And their words exposed something inside you. But really, their words probably had something more to do about them than it did about you. But you chose to take the offense. And so I can make the argument, but I think a better way to say it is you choose whether the words hurt you. And you choose whose words matter to you.
Sure. Yeah, and I think
easier said than done.
And I think that is really good for when the kid's out on the playground and kids are just trying to be mean, as opposed to the difference if I'm in a bad mood and I walk in the house and my wife is working her butt off. Maybe my wife is a pretty hard worker, okay? And she's pretty independent and she's pretty strong. And everyone loves Rachel. Tell you what, I do have the power to hurt my wife with my words. And I can't really, and to your point, I mean, you're not wrong what you just said. But also, it's a double-edged sword. So it's like back to this idea of I can hurt my wife with my words. I don't want to do that. And after I hurt her,
in the right frame of mind, you don't want to do that. But there might be other factors that you're not in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, and I wonder if I'm being a jerk and she takes offense to it, rightfully so. Maybe I can't say they're just words. Don't listen to me. They don't mean anything, because that's another thing too. It's like, oh, don't let my words have power over you. But to your point,
well, you choose, and you by getting married, she chose that your words matter. Otherwise, she wouldn't have decided to marry and have kids. So there are certain people that words hurt worse. And then now you take it to the extent, you go back to, well, why did I say the things that I said? It was probably out of rage, fear, fight or flight reflex to a person that I love, because I'm guilty of this too. I bet that's what Chrissy and Rachel were reminiscing about in the parking lot of Madison Park. But, why would I say that? Well, probably because it exposed an insecurity in me, or I was questioning something and I was fighting back. I snapped back.
Yeah. That's what maybe not you, but like guys do that sometimes. Husbands do that.
I
maybe
do.
Wives do it sometimes. It's just
we're all guilty.
We're all guilty. But one of these cliches or these platitudes of how important connections are, and that's what you are super good at, my friend. You're super good, and I really am so happy that you came on this pod.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the next meeting.
Yeah, dude.
And thank you so much. You always tell me about what I've done for you, but I'll tell you, it comes the other way too. It goes back to this double-edged sword of what you've done for me. So I'm really grateful for you. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for all you're doing in our community, and it's been fun. It's been fun to walk this journey with you. And it's funny, when we started 4 years ago, I remember you saying, "What if we do this for 2 years? What will we be? And what if we do this for 3 or 4 years?" And you just look at kind of the evolution of all of our lives. We were made to do life in community, and I think we're all stronger because of it.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.